Good evening, everyone. My name is Bob Bomer, and it's my honor to serve all of you as the president of East Georgia State College. We're extremely proud to have all of you here with us this evening. This campus and this college belongs to this community, and we are truly proud whenever all of you come out here and make the best use possible of all of these wonderful resources, because this is your college, this is your campus, so thank you. We're honored by your presence. Tonight, we're here to celebrate the freedoms that we all enjoy. And I know that we have in our audience members of our armed forces and former members of our armed forces, police officers, firefighters, first responders. You deserve our honor and our recognition. If you fall in one of those groups, would you stand up and let us recognize your service, because that's why we all get to enjoy being here tonight. Thank you so much. The event we're enjoying tonight is made possible by our East Georgia State College Foundation as part of what we call the Vision Series. And tonight, Mr. Denny Key and other members of our foundation trustees are with us. Could I also ask that special group of people to stand and be recognized for making this event possible? Denny, please stand. Dr. Sasser. I'd also like to invite all of you out, since I've got a captive audience right now, again on August 17th. On August 17th at 11 o'clock, we're going to celebrate a really exciting addition to this campus, which is the opening of the expansion to our academic building. The chancellor, all of our local legislators are going to be here, so please come out and enjoy that very special morning with us, August 17th at 11 a.m. Did all of you enjoy those hamburgers and hot dogs? How about that? Ruth Underwood and our food services professionals provide that kind of food for us here at the college on a daily basis, and they're really amazing, and so thanks to them. Angie Williams has done the planning for this event tonight. The Office of Institutional Advancement, led by Elizabeth Gilmer, has provided a huge amount of the support. Mike Roundtree and all of the information technology folks make the fact that you have to listen to me on this microphone possible. And so thanks to all of those East Georgia State College folks who make all of these events possible. Let's give them a round of applause as well. Now, the folks I especially want to recognize are all of these fine musicians that are here for our 5th annual Patriotic Concert. This is one of my favorite days of the year, and the musicians that are members of this Columbia County Orchestra, I mean this so sincerely, it's really a special day at East Georgia State College when all of you come here and share your time and especially your talents with us. So especially, let's give a big Swainsboro, East Georgia welcome to the Columbia County Orchestra. I think most of you know this, but another reason the Columbia County Orchestra is really special to us is that the executive director and music director for that orchestra and the conductor is one of our own, Rob Norden, who's a faculty member here in music and is also responsible for our first year experience at our Augusta campus. And Rob is joined in the orchestra. I believe his father's here tonight playing with us in the orchestra, and I'm sure his mom is here tonight as well. There she is. And thank you for always being here. And tonight, the MC for our program is going to be Rob's wife, Elizabeth. So without any further comments from me, please welcome the Columbia County Orchestra, Maestro Rob Norden, and our MC, Elizabeth Norden. Thanks, everyone.
Good evening. I am Elizabeth Norden. I'm glad to be here. We all are, and we appreciate you coming to join with us tonight. As we begin our program, will you please stand and join me as we pledge allegiance to our American flag? Please remain standing after the pledge for the playing of our national anthem. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. The Columbia County Orchestra welcomes you tonight to an American Salute. In the past, the orchestra has presented patriotic programs to celebrate the birthday of America. Some years, the orchestra presents an American timeline of historical events punctuated by key musical selections from various periods in American music. Tonight, we present to you a musical cavalcade using our own American history as a framework for sharing music written for and about key personalities, events, and sentiments, celebrating the American dream of freedom. Our first selection this evening is entitled Nathan Hale Trilogy. This programmatic work illustrates the story of the life of the American patriot, Nathan Hale, in 3 movements: Entrada, Intermezzo, and Finale, The Rangers. Hale, who was born in Coventry, Connecticut on June 6, 1755, graduated from Yale University and became a school teacher. When war began in the American colonies, he joined a Connecticut regiment and was made a captain in 1776. You'll note he was only 21. On a secret mission ordered by General George Washington, Hale went behind enemy lines to gather information on the British Army's location. He was captured by the British in New York City, and he was hanged for espionage on September 22, 1776. The music of the Entrada heralds the American pursuit for freedom from British tyranny. The Intermezzo, with its melancholy and thoughtful textures, outlays the impending fate for Hale, but also America's unquenchable thirst for triumphing in her quest for independence. The last movement, Rangers, telegraphs the hoofbeats of the horses of the Connecticut Regiment to ultimately enjoy the triumph of freedom afforded by the sacrifices of many, including Nathan Hale. The pursuit of freedom in America included for many the quest to worship as they pleased. Faith was a fundamental pillar to the dreams of Americans to eventually experience freedom. People of faith from many religious backgrounds came to America to experience not only freedom of religion, but also to live in a land where religious practice was not directed by the edicts of a colonial monarch. Nettleton is the name given to the tune of an early American hymn, which eventually was sung to the text, "Come, thou fount of every blessing." Hear the words, the opening words of this hymn text. Come, thou fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnet, sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mount, I'm fixed upon it, mount of thy redeeming love. Following the American Civil War, the United States had many hurdles to overcome related to the wounds of slavery, the various Indian wars of the 19th century, and the struggle for all Americans to receive the privilege to vote in national elections. In the closing years of the 1800s, America found itself in the throes of war once again. But this time, the North and South joined together as the newly strengthened United States to help others overcome another aggressor. The Spanish-American War originated in the Cuban struggle for independence from Spain, which began in February of 1895. Spain's brutally repressive measures to halt the rebellion were graphically portrayed for the American public by several sensational newspapers, and American sympathy for the rebels rose. The growing popular demand for U.S. intervention became an insistent chorus after the unexplained sinking in Havana Harbor of the battleship USS Maine in early 1898. The Maine had been sent to protect U.S. citizens and property after anti-Spanish rioting in Havana. Spain announced an armistice on April 9th and sped up its new program to grant Cuba limited powers of self-government. But the U.S. Congress soon afterward issued resolutions that declared Cuba's right to independence, demanded the withdrawal of Spain's armed forces from the island, and authorized the president's use of force to secure that withdrawal while renouncing any U.S. design for annexing Cuba. The war officially ended near the end of 1898 when the U.S. and Spanish governments signed the Treaty of Paris on December 10th. Apart from guaranteeing the independence of Cuba, the treaty also forced Spain to cede Guam and Puerto Rico to the United States. Spain also agreed to sell the Philippines to the United States for the sum of $20 million. The U.S. Senate ratified the treaty on February 6, 1899, by a margin of only one vote. Now you may ask what the history lesson has to do with our patriotic music program tonight. Well, patriotism was now evident all over America. And John Philip Sousa, former leader of the United States Marine Band, composed several marches during this period. Many of those early marches were, in fact, from Sousa operettas, such as The Devil's Deputy. Sousa, aspiring to be known as the American Opera King, wrote many marches which at first were showcased in his operettas. However, as time went on, these marches became closer associated with the United States military and the patriotic celebrations of a country joining together to protect freedoms for the American people and those abroad. Tonight, the orchestra plays two marches from this era, Liberty Bell and The Thunderer. In 1893, at the age of 33, Catherine Lee Bates, an English professor at Wellesley College, had taken a train trip to Colorado Springs, Colorado, to teach a short summer school session at Colorado College. Several of the sites on her trip were inspirational to her, including the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, the White City with its promise of the future contained within its alabaster buildings, the wheat fields of America's heartland, Kansas, through which her train was riding on July 16th, the majestic view of the Great Plains from high atop Pikes Peak. On the pinnacle of that mountain, the sights she had beheld began to form in her mind a poem, which she wrote down upon returning to her hotel room. The poem was initially published 2 years later in The Congregationalist to commemorate the 4th of July, and it quickly caught the public's fancy. Hear these words from her writing. "Oh, beautiful, for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea." With the close of one century and the beginning of another, the United States found itself in a world that was not at rest. Although many Americans were resistant to their country being involved in further war, the early years of the 20th century found many other world powers engaged in conflict. The early days of what would later be called World War I involved military forces of several nations, initially engaging 8 Allied power countries against the 4 Central Power countries of the German Empire, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria. It was not until later that the United States found itself once again engaged in the war. The war in the trenches, as it was called by some, saw death and destruction on the soil of many European countries. Songs were written, newspaper stories were filed, and poems were penned describing the atrocities of war and the destruction left in its wake. One such poem was In Flanders Fields. In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow between the crosses row on row that mark our place. And in the sky, the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved. And now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you, from failing hands, we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields. Following World War I, there was still unrest in the world, not only in Europe, but also abroad on several continents worldwide. On December 7, 1941, the bombing of the United States Navy Pacific Fleet headquarters in Hawaii forced our country into another war, World War II. Included in the destruction of this war was the task of housing and holding POWs, prisoners of war. The remote locations of Bataan in the Philippines, German prison camps known as Stalags, and various other death camps became all too well known throughout and after the end of the war. In ensuing decades after the end of the war in 1945, literary expressions in movies, scripts, and television shows shared a glimpse from various perspectives into the lives of POWs. One 1963 movie, entitled The Great Escape, featured Steve McQueen and an all-star cast in the roles of escaped Allied POWs, each seeking various means in order to return home. Just a few years later, the TV show, Hogan's Heroes, depicted a humorous perspective, perhaps a comic relief that was needed, of Allied POW life. 2 of the show's stars, Werner Klemperer and John Banner, both of Hebrew descent, insisted that the characters they played and the show itself depict the Nazi commandant and soldiers as clowns and buffoons rather than as honored military soldiers. The roles of Colonel Klink and Sergeant Schultz did just that. We salute all of our brave military men and women that served our country, not only during World War II, but also throughout American history. We've recognized you already this evening. We want to say that we thank you for your honorable service. Listen now as the orchestra plays the theme music from the movie The Great Escape and also from the television show Hogan's Heroes. Nashville country music star Lee Greenwood penned these words in 1982. If tomorrow all the things were gone I'd worked for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife, I'd thank my lucky stars to be living here today, because the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American where at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I'd gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, because there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. This song, originally released in the spring of 1984, was played at the Republican National Convention with President Ronald Reagan and First Lady Nancy Reagan in attendance. The song gained greater prominence during the Gulf War in 1990 and 91 as a way of boosting morale. The popularity of the song rose sharply after the September 11th attacks. It was re-released as a single, re-entering the country music charts at number 16 and peaking at number 16 on the Billboard Hot 100 pop chart in 2001. The song was also re-recorded in 2003, paralleling the invasion of Iraq, and re-released as God Bless the USA 2003. The song experienced renewed popularity in May 2011 when Osama bin Laden was killed by an American raid in Pakistan. The song had sold over 1 million copies in the United States by July 2015. And here we have God Bless the USA. For our final number, we back history up just a little bit to draw attention to one of the most well-known and what has become one of the most beloved patriot songs of our history. In 1918, during World War I, an American songwriter named Irving Berlin wrote "God Bless America." It was revised by him in 1938, 3 years before the U.S. officially entered World War II. The later version, recorded by Kate Smith, became her signature song after recording with RCA Victor on March 21, 1939. Here are the words of the later version. While the storm clouds gather far across the sea, let us swear allegiance to a land that is free. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair as we raise our voices in a solemn prayer. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans white with foam, God bless America, my home sweet home. At the appropriate time, as Rob turns to you, we invite you, the audience, to join the orchestra on the chorus. We thank you for coming this evening. God bless you, and God bless America.